The term new aesthetic can be defined as the spread of digital elements into the real world, and the use of early digital artifacts in modern media such as 8-bit art and low-res phone filters. New aesthetic influences can be traced back to the early 1980s with the birth of the digital era, where we saw the first graphical user interfaces, or GUIs, appear on the market, which led to a new artistic era, digital art. April Greeman was one of the pioneers of digital art, and her piece, Does It Make Sense?, would go on to inspire a new generation of digital artists to push the boundaries of what was seen as acceptable in the art world at the time. Alongside the birth of the GUI, another revolution was taking place, the gaming revolution. The creators of early video games were faced with challenges due to the limitations of the systems at the time. This led to some creative solutions, which subsequently created the beloved 8-bit art style. Computational power increased year after year, and designers of video games and digital art were no longer restrained by the technological limitations of their systems. This led to video games and graphics becoming more realistic. With the advent of the internet in the 1990s, the internet art movement was born. Internet art was heavily influenced by the 8-bit style that video games had created, as well as ASCII art that used computer characters to create images that could be shared in emails or early blogs. In Lev Manovich's 2001 book, The Language of New Media, he describes the 5 principles of new media: numerical representation, modularity, automation, variability, and transcoding. Transcoding is the translation of media into computer data, and computer data being translated into familiar media such as videos or audio. This blurs the lines between cultural and computational worlds. In 2011, computer scientist and digital artist James Bridle coined the term new aesthetic after he noticed a trend of imagery and objects taking on a form that he believed was an aesthetic of the future.
I have a silly name for many things, which is the new aesthetic. The new aesthetic stands not for the artifacts of this technological progression, but the experience of living in a world where our cultural objects are spread through all the devices that we have, where our memory is outsourced to the network and is kind of partially retrievable, but is also just kind of out there and formed out of everything. And for me, the experience of working with books and literature and seeing the cognitive processes involved in that change are a key to almost every one of these things, recognizing that every time we interact with technology, we're also committing something of ourselves and our experiences to it, and becoming part of that larger network which enables that. When you start to look at the world in those kind of ways, it makes a very different kind of sense. So I don't have a vast point for you, except to ask, look more carefully at the way you behave with these things, and think what it is that we really want to be doing with them. Thank you very much.
There are numerous examples of new aesthetic that can be observed all around us on a daily basis, such as drone footage, art that has been completely generated by artificial intelligence, and glitch art. Glitch art has become popular in recent years, and many artists have adopted a style of art that could be described as a new aesthetic. This can also be seen in the ever-popular 8-bit art style, which often portrays pixelated video game elements within the real world. New aesthetics suggests that the computer is seeping into everyday imagery and objects. There are even valuable artworks that are created entirely by artificial intelligence that go on to be sold alongside art created by humans. In Bruce Sterling's Wired article, an essay on new aesthetic, Sterling claims that although all of the imagery that Bridle collects is cool, he believes that most of it lacks a common connection and that we should not praise art that is created by computers, as it is not consciously created. With the advent of new technology and faster internet in the late 2000s, a lot of the problems such as glitches and RGB issues disappeared, as well as video game graphics becoming more realistic and less prone to bugs. This left a void that needed to be filled, and artists began creating imagery and objects that were inspired by technological limitations of the past. New aesthetics can be described as a sense of nostalgia for older technologies, while also being a vision of the aesthetic of the future and how computers and technology are seamlessly woven into everyday life. With the constant evolution of technology and the proliferation of computer language and imagery into our everyday lives, we are left with the burning question: what will the new aesthetic of the future look like?